Thank you.
Alexa, turn off the timer.
40 minutes timer canceled.
Anything else you need before you start?
Nope.
Okay.
So come haunt me, so come take me.
I just divided it, so that's all yours. Ginger's in there too.
Wait.
Hi.
Hi.
Miles, do you want to come eat dinner with me?
What's up, Uber? What's up, guys? Oops, looks like we only have like 3 people here. Unless it look like we have a lot of people. I mean, I didn't put it on my syllabus. I didn't announce it, even though I don't know, talked about doing these reviews. But anyways, I'm actually gonna see for tomorrow if anyone wants to review next week after school. Put it on my syllabus to remind myself. So yeah, guys, Oobs and whoever else, I see 2 more people. It doesn't really tell me your names, but I literally just got back home from a Golden Apple assembly, a Golden Apple like award at West Hills. So I haven't got to eat any food. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get this done as quick as possible so I can get to dinner and then get to emails and get to work and then hopefully go to sleep. So let's get right into it, guys, because if you get your questions answered in about 30 minutes, I'd love to end this a little bit earlier so that I can go ahead and get some food because I haven't eaten. Yeah, I'm just on pure life. None of that, bro. So, I think, Amara, you had some questions yesterday regarding that. And also, I don't know if you guys can create the chat function. I don't see the chat function anymore, but there's a bunch of kids. There's, I think, 7 of us on the YouTube. Looks like we just lost a couple other people. But anyways, if you could maybe open up a chat and see if get these people to go ahead and join the review session on YouTube. But yeah, like I said, Mario, if you guys could start hammering those specific questions for period 6, I'll help you guys out. Doesn't look like Hindreen's here where it wants like an overview of everything. I'll probably do that a little bit more tomorrow. Yeah, so if you remind me of the question, Mario. Okay, the effects of the Gilded Age. Yeah, I mean, when we say the Gilded Age, really it's the effects of, the increasing market revolution and our reliance on business, right? I don't know, man. That's a really hard question. It's because we could do a lot of different things for that. We could talk about how a effect of this is the rise of the antitrust. The effect of it is the rise of the populace, as they think that banks have too much power. Remember that we get these silver guys for the populists, right? Who later become the progressives. I know Mario and I, you talked tonight a little bit more about the progressives and who they were. Ultimately, later it's going to lead to muckraking. So yeah, it's a really difficult one, Mario, for us to answer. I mean, there's so many things that I could talk about. There's social effects. There are unions that are putting in, but they're largely destroyed at the beginning, as you guys know. The National Guard is used. Actually, the Sherman Antitrust Act is actually used to stop unions, not to stop big businesses. So I think, Mario, we'd have to do is you'd have to kind of look at period 5 in your it starts on period 6, excuse me, starts on page 319, and obviously towards the later end you're going to start seeing a little bit more frustration. Let's see here, let me see if I can point Mario to a couple ideas of the effects. I mean, it could go on forever. And farm problems, immigration issues, quota systems, nativists pop up, aka the Know Nothing Party, and they are really frustrated about the Catholic immigrants that are coming in due to the increasing focus on the industrialization. So, Mario, sorry about that, man. Like, honestly, if I were to tell you the effects probably start on page 327 and go all the way to the end of the period, which would be like 397. And it's going to be difficult for me to try to summarize 70 pages in just a couple of minutes. So, let's go ahead and take a look, Mario, real quickly before I get to your question on the student copy of the YouTube Live. And let's look at period 6 and kind of figure out what are some of the effects. One thing is the end of the Frontier by Turner, right? He becomes the Frontier thesis. So I'm looking at the YouTube. Another effect would be the rise of the populace, like I talked before, which is really a focus on poor farmers getting access to easy credit, right? And easy loans and easy money, which has been a consistent demand, right? Between Shays' Rebellion, which is due to debt issues with the American Revolution, to Manifest Destiny, as Western lands are being theoretically manipulated by banks, as banks and rich people want to keep on driving the interest rate, right? Right now, the interest rate is like 2%. Like, I don't want to even put my money in a bank because that's not that much. When I was your guys' age, the interest rate was like close to 8 to 10%, which was good for me because I saved money. So that means for every $100, I make $8 for just keeping it in the bank. But if you want a loan, right, it's not good. So remember, if you have money and you're rich and you're investing in the banks, you want those interest rates as high as possible. If you are a poor farmer, you are a brand new, you just entered the workforce, you don't have a lot of money, you're poor, you probably want low interest rates. And that's a consistent battle. And we know that largely banks are run by rich people. And so obviously, as much as they can, they're going to drive up interest rates. And that is one of the biggest cries about the populace is an idea of, inserting more money into the money supply, like silver, and decreasing the interest rate by increasing the money supply, therefore making it easier to get loans and cheap loans, right? And have easy credit, right? That word credit keeps on popping up. So that's kind of a little bit more, Plessy versus Ferguson. That's more of a reflection. I'll get to Uber about that, about the about Reconstruction, right? That's kind of something that's happening with our social groups, especially in the South, right? The separate but equal clause that will be created out of the Plessy versus Ferguson case. But as far as some of the effects, a little bit difficult to kind of summarize those. Another effect, is that we get the social gospel. I'll put the gospel wealth and also the social gospel. here. The gospel of wealth was seeing that if you're rich, your job is to give back to society, give back to the United States, give back to our country, right? And we can see that currently today with like really large philanthropists like Bill and Melinda Gates, right? Philanthropists mean giving their money back, where they make, they have lots of money and they do the the Gates Millennium Scholarship, right? Where you get to go to any college for free. And those are specifically targeted to poorer groups. So we can see the gospel of wealth being seen still today as we have these kind of rich businessmen and really successful individuals give back to their country. We have the social gospel. Whenever you hear the social gospel, I think about Jane Addams and settlement houses. And that was really, Mario, going back to, the Democrats and the progressives and that stuff. I mean, there's another example of trying to help the poor inside the city, who are homeless and don't have a job, get them on their feet and then get there. We still we call them halfway houses today. Right. We got those bridge shelters here in San Diego to help out the homeless, right? It's hard to hire somebody when you can't take a shower, you don't have good clothing. So get a place to make them stable, give them an ID. They can now get a job and they can, can take a shower and can, get ready for an interview and wear that shirt, wear that tie to go in and get that job to get them off the street. So the social gospel. So hopefully, Mario, I kind of talked about those important things in period 6. So there you go. Reconstruction, was it successful? You can talk to many African Americans and they would say that, the goal of Reconstruction was to make sure that the South came back to the United States. And when it did that, it kind of ended its slavery past. It got away from its Confederate past. Well, we've already seen examples, whether it be, the amnesty clause that Lincoln did that said only 10% of you have to take a loyalty oath. That means 90% are still frustrated at the United States, especially the North. We can see in the court case again, Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson is a example of the separate but equal clause allowing segregation, right? So because of this, you're going to have colored schools versus white schools, colored drinking fountains versus white drinking fountains. Rosa Parks ultimately later in period 8 will challenge this idea by sitting in the front of the bus instead of the back of the bus, right? And the reason why she was forced in the back of the bus is due to the separate but equal clause, right? The segregation clause. So there you go. So was Reconstruction era successful? Well, we brought the South. I mean, this is going to be a debate, right? There's no right answer. I think you guys have understood in history that, we like to try to paint these things into truths, but as you guys know from sourcing and DBQs, there's motivations. So was Reconstruction era seriously successful? Did it bring the South back to the United States? Yeah, but when the South came back to the United States, we also saw the rise of the KKK, and we saw the increasing, prejudice towards African Americans. And after that, we got the Jim Crow laws, we got the Black codes, we have them being forced into sharecropping. We have the rise of the KKK, we have the rise of the nativists, we have the rise of the Know Nothing Party, right? All of these are examples of where did Southern society really shake its roots from its prejudice past and slavery. And some would still argue that today, those groups are still present within the South and even more beyond the South, and they still have not shaken them from the prejudice. So anyways, there's that. Boss Tweed hindering, you just need to find him as an example of corruption, right? There's a lot of examples. So he went to a place called Tammany Hall. He was basically this is kind of idea of machine boss politics. So if you knew Boss Tweed and he was an elected official, well, he had access to government contracts, he had access to employment. And so he starts charging the government for all of this stuff to build Tammany Hall, and he's overcharging it. And, he's hooking up his plasterer who did the job at I think $500,000, like $500,000. And then it gets redone and it's so bad that they have to redo it again. And the same plasterer comes in and he gets $2 million for making up the work that he should have done the right way the first time. And this is real dollars in that sense. So it's again, Boss Tweed is just an example of corruption, but he is most closely associated to Tammany Hall. He is associated as a man that ran for government or would hook people up into government, ensuring that they would give him favors, and those favors were largely dealt with money, employment, and contracts. Page 345, Uber. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat a little bit. I have not eaten since about 1 o'clock. I was at like a golden apple thing for Mr. Sawyer, so I deeply apologize, but got my chopsticks. Gonna get something real quick. Hold on. Yeah. So the Dos Verdiac, I believe, is with the yeah. Give me a second. Yeah, so is it important? I don't know. Like, I really do think like the story of the American Indians, especially as we go further and further in history, is super important. So what is this doing? Basically, it's saying um, they basically broke up the tribal lands into acres, and those acres, some of them had to become U.S. citizens and basically had to become more Americanized. That'd be probably cutting their hair, learning the language, becoming educated, going to American schools. Again, assimilation means to kind of blend in. Ultimately, they talk about being a massive failure, right? I mean, at the very end, a lot of people had died. A lot of the land that got divided up, the best land went to the government and went to also people speculating. Remember, guessing that the land would have oil or this or that, whatever resources might be in there. And they would probably push the Indians into more horrible land. And if you kind of look at the story of American Indians, right, the Kumeyaay would have owned downtown San Diego, and right now they're east of El Cajon, right? They're put in a kind of in an area that's kind of not really in the San Diego area, and it's really hard geography. There's a lot of rocks and boulders and hills and stuff over there. Really hard to develop it. So American Indians were not giving the best land, and so the Dawes Act, as you can read when you read that paragraph, is really pushing American Indians off of their land and trying to civilize them, which proved to be devastating to the American Indians. I worked in San Juan Capistrano, and I worked with one of the Native American leaders there as a banker, and she just talked about horrible things that happened to her aunts and uncles, like, again, being forced to go to a white school, being the only brown American Indian there. They were constantly bullied. They constantly harassed. They were forced to cut their hair, give up their tribal customs. A lot of times, I've had a friend actually work with the Kumeyaay Indians. A lot of times they just want to go out and go explore and go hike and go do other things. Now they're being forced into classrooms and the little boxes, and being stuck to a seat. So there's the Dos Verdiac Act. It isn't important to know. Again, it was like, it's always hard to answer those questions. It's hard for me to answer those questions as a teacher. Theoretically, any word inside of this massive book in here is important to know. What would I spend my time in? I'm going to keep on saying it. Take a look at that Google Doc. Take a look at that YouTube list of YouTube key terms. And I think that's what you guys should really focus on. So we'll try to refer back on that. So that being said, I'll probably just yeah, Andrian, I know you showed up. I was just going to say that we'll probably go ahead and kind of look at some of the key terms. I'll do a quick 10, 15-minute little overview of those things so that you guys have more information, and then we'll go. Relationship between business and government. Obviously, this starts with the Civil War and like Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people would call him like a tyrant, maybe a communist dictator taking total control of the government and the economy, especially if you're in the South, right? This guy came in and basically took away popular sovereignty regarding slavery and enforced that you went a certain way. But really what we need to know is that, that business and government at this time is very what I call hands-on, but in a very supportive way, not a negative way, right? Multiple times business and government are working together and to ensure that laborers don't get fair wages, to ensure that business has access to money at a very cheaper rate, or they can transfer their goods. Remember that whole Interstate Commerce Act, the fact that the big companies that had a lot of money got actually paid less for the transportation of their goods, while poor farmers were actually charged more. So again, just that relation between business and government, continuity change over time. I'm going to say this, nothing changed, from Alexander Hamilton, love of factories and making a first bank to pay off the debt, start investing and directing that money that they collected from taxes back into the Northeast Industrial Revolution, to ultimately even today, with Donald Trump cutting or President Trump, excuse me, cutting the taxes from 30 to 15% for corporations. I would say that, if I were to argue, there has been little change and that's what maybe makes America strong, is our really focus towards business. Singapore has one of the lowest tax rates in the world. And it's one of the richest. And the reason being is because they attract all the businesses, because businesses don't have to pay. And then what little taxes they pay on these very expensive businesses, they collect. And that kind of has turned this. If you look where Singapore is, it's a middle of a marsh. It's basically only has a bay. When we did geography, I don't know if you guys are Procopio kids, but there's like 4 or 5 countries. You have to guess which one's the richest, and this one basically just has a bay, and it's basically the size of San Diego. And how did this become one of the most richest countries in the entire world, this little speck on the earth? Well, it's really because of its low taxes. So again, going to business and government, I think that's super important, that you guys just understand that government and business are working well together. I would say they always have. I'd say every country, going back to mercantilism, was always making decisions with tariffs, with taxes, with where to invest its money, on who to tax, when and where, has always been quite supportive of it. So Robber Barons versus Captain Industry, those are just 2 labels given the same person, right? Same groups of people, right? So we have, you guys should know they're famous industrialists: J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller. Let's see here. Why am I missing? Why don't we say there's 4? There's J.P. Morgan Chase, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie. I probably should skip a couple of pages to figure out what that is. I'm sure some of you guys are probably saying it out loud right now. I'm going to turn to page 322. So there's JP Morgan, there's Carnegie, there's Rockefeller. I guess that's pretty much the big ones. But anyways, those 3, are they seen as taking advantage of the system by influencing government, by reducing taxes, by breaking up unions, by taking advantage of a government doesn't regulate it, and basically making a lot of money off of the American people and the American government? Or are they captains of industry? Without their leadership, the United States wouldn't be such a strong business-oriented country as it is today, right? Did these captains guide America and our country to success, wealth, and riches, right? I mean, that's going to, again, be just like I talked with Uber about Reconstruction. Did it actually succeed or not succeed? It's really a part of history, right? There's evidence in which they acted quite cruel to individuals, and they didn't provide back to their country. However, there's times where, especially Andrew Carnegie, he definitely invokes the gospel of wealth, right? He brings Carnegie Carnegie is one of the universities out there. He starts investing in parks and libraries. In colleges, parks and libraries are being to be enjoyed by the public. So he's doing this for free. So is he perhaps a good man that not only helped develop steel, not only made us one of the best countries in the world, but also gave back in a very charitable way, right? Organized labor, we don't really see that happening too often. We see a little bit in the market revolution, I guarantee there are people frustrated about their wages, and obviously, business not going to want to increase wages. It's going to want to keep those as low as possible to increase its profit. And so organized labor, largely we have strikes, right? We have the Pullman strike. We have these railroad strikes. And what do we need to know about those strikes? Those strikes are broken up not only by business, but when business can't break them up, government comes in, right? We have the National Guard. Business hires something called the Pinkerton Guards, which are still used today. These are police forces that are going to be using, violence and, guns and batons and bats to ensure that people go back to work and break up these strikes and unions. Social Darwinism, I think you guys really know. Gospel of Wealth, Social Gospel, I went through a couple times. Frontier Thesis by Turner. Obviously, Frederick Jackson Turner looks at what we call manifest destiny, and the Frontier Thesis is this, that the frontier is closed. So he always sees, and as I kind of said in class today, if you ever want to become rich and you're a single male, you move west, right? You find your own piece of land, you make your own little kingdom, and you figure it out. Frederick Jackson Turner begins looking at the lack of available land and goes, this is a massive problem. The Americans have always had cheap and easy land. And what happens when we go all the way to California and they're hit the ocean? There's no more land. My argument has always been that then we'll go further beyond our ocean, right? We're going to look at Latin America. We're going to look at Asia specifically. If Europe is looking at Africa and the Middle East and parts of Asia as important places to get raw resources and also markets to sell their goods, right? Groups of people that will be willing to buy their goods is what a market is. Then we're going to expand ours beyond the ocean as well. Again, Uber, you hit it with the Dawes Act. You got these, the Indian Wars, and the ideas of the Indian Wars is these are the final wars of the American Indians. They're going to lose their total independence. They're going to be mistreated by the government. Ultimately, we will try to hook them back by having these reservations in which they can do whatever they want. And that's why you go to reservation, you're allowed gambling, but in other places you can't, right? So I would probably know some of the Indian Wars, and basically the story is that the Indians, really lost a lot of their independence, right? They're being forced to, like the Dawes Act, they're forced to assimilate, right? Being forced to become Americanized, those things. Plessy versus Ferguson, there's only 5 court cases. When I was in AP US history, guys, there's probably about 15 to 20 court cases at least that we'd have to memorize. Really, in your key concept, there's only 5. One of them is Plessy versus Ferguson. You don't need to know really much about the court case. If you see it on the multiple choice test, if you just see court case Plessy versus Ferguson, all you need to think is separate but equal, right? This allows the legalization of segregation. And, once again, if I'm a person, I see our Supreme Court acting very interesting, right? The Supreme Court decided that African Americans were considered property and therefore not even a human being and considered a slave. We also now see it saying that it's okay to have segregation. It's okay to separate the races based off of separate people by race, right? So that's pretty much. And then Gilded Age and the Rise of Populists. I think we should probably take a look at the populists and what they believe. Just going real quickly on page 330, talking about the strikes. We have the National Labor Union, that's a failure of the Knights of Labor. We got the Haymarket bombing, where it's kind of attributed to some anarchists. We have the American Federation of Labor. Now we got those strikes. And look, it says strike breaking in the 1890s. That means they're getting broken. That's on 331. The Homestead strike, the Pullman strike. So there you go on those. We're going to go ahead and try to find the rise of populists. Just screwing on forward 341, the Chinese Exclusion Act. OOBS and everybody else, 343, American Indians. That's what's happening over there. There's that segregation that's happening, changes. And really, if you guys want to look at page 352, the Ocala platform is really going to kind of focus people onto the populace. So 352 on the bottom of the page, you're going to see a total of 4 different things. Number 1, the direct election of U.S. senators. So there's going to be lower tax rates. They're going to be graduated income tax, where people that make more money pay more taxes, which we have today, and people who make less money pay little to no taxes. And also a new banking system. It's not allowed to be regulated by JP Morgan Chase, but it's regulated by the federal government. And remember, that's coming back to getting cheap and easy credit. So page 352 is really about the rise of populists. If you look on page 353, they talk about how the last thing is that how this would later go in the populists, and the populists would shake the foundation of the two-party system in 1892 and 1896. And see chapter 19, which is actually one more chapter after that. So I'm going to skip to chapter 19 and kind of try to find you guys the populists and have them what they kind of believe. So let me see here. Yeah, and I don't know if there's actually something that's going to talk. Oh, there it is, the rise of the populists. So, page 386. But remember, the populists are largely a farmer thing. The progressives are going to kind of not only focus on farmers, but also they're going to focus on women. They're going to focus on minorities. They're also going to focus more specifically on the wages being earned up in the north, not so much the farmers who are making their money off of land, right? So there you go. There's the real review of the rise of the populace and all those items. Reconstruction policy 293 for Jeb. So we're going back to probably period 5, you want to say? That's okay. I'll go there for you guys. Yeah, I mean, whenever I find this, I just look at those two things. First of all former leaders and officers of the. It's basically said that if you're a leader or if you were elected for the Confederate States of the United States, that they got the loss of voting, right? And also Confederates with more than 20,000 in taxable property, with more than 20,000 taxable. Yeah, and any Confederates that were rich, I guess. Wow, interesting. So if you had $20,000 or more, or you were a leader or office holder, you would lose your right to vote. The resident grant to individual parties as long as escape plans. Yeah, it's kind of interesting at the very end, that he says all this, but then behind the scenes, he's hooking up all of these Confederates who were office owners, and they get pardoned. It says many former Confederate leaders were back in office by the fall of 1865, and that's insane because 1865 is like at the end of the Civil War. So. $324, go to the Knight Company. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be an important one, Jeb, but I'm already going to say that it's most likely, if it's going to be the Knight Company, it's probably the laborers, the Knights of Labor, and it's probably restricting their ability to go ahead and create unions, right? So we'll go ahead and take a closer look at this on page 324. Although federal law against monopolies was on the books, it was too vaguely worded to stop development of trust in 1890s. Furthermore, the Supreme Court in the United States East Company ruled that the Sherman interest could be applied only to commerce, not to manufacturing. As a result, the U.S. Department. So it saying that this is only antitrust is only due to trading things. If you trade things, it has nothing to do with making things. So this was really a law against Walmarts and the traders and the Amazon.coms, not necessarily the businesses, the middleman. So, due to that, these monopolies are largely being done by making things, and because of that, there's few convictions. So in that, we see the Supreme Court once again taking the side of business. That's a theme, right? Going back to that first question, Jeb, or that first key term, was the role or the relationship between business and government. Remember, government, whether it be the Supreme Court, the Congress, or the presidents, they are, kind of falling into this problem of corruption, and they are being easily influenced by business, and business is taking control of those governments, right? Remember that one picture, that one really famous political cartoon of all the trusts, right? And they're big and they're fat and they're huge and they're in the Senate, right? And they're in the very back while the little senators are down there, and it looks like who owns this place is all these trusts, right? And these trusts aren't gaining the support of the government. And why are they gaining the support? They are gaining support of the government. They're not being broken up by the government. And why are they not being broken up by the government? Because they basically own the government due to corruption, due to buying officials off and hooking them up with stocks and ensuring that if they pass lower tax rates, you'll get this or that or this. So a lot of that corruption happening right then. So I don't know if we need to memorize it, but it goes underneath the theme of government, whether it be the Supreme Court, whether it be the Congress, whether it be the president, really, really, falling head over heels in love with business, so to say, and hooking them up as much as possible. Yeah, that's a good link. That's a good equation, Jeb. And also, let's take a look at who probably started this little party was, again, a lot of historians will say, yeah, Alexander Hamilton loved manufacturing and business, or plenty of people have loved business a long time, but a lot of people will credit Abraham Lincoln as the one that really said, hey, business, we need you. We need you to produce guns. We need you to build bullets. Hey, railroads, make them as fast as possible. Andrew Carnegie and your steel company, you make steel lines as quickly as possible so that we get hooked up. And I guarantee Andrew Carnegie was probably going down to the South and making railroad lines for them as well, right? He doesn't care as long as they're making money. If you ever see the first Iron Man, right? Iron Man's Tony Stark is actually a guns dealer, right? He don't care who's buying his guns. He don't care who wins. he actually loves war when it keeps on going and nobody wins. Why? Because everybody needs a gun and everybody needs a bomb. So I guarantee businesses were going back and forth. But really, Abraham Lincoln's love of business to ensure that he wins the Civil War and his focus on winning the Civil War and keep the Union really kind of transitions after his death into business having a lot of power. And they use that power and money now to influence it, right? And there's a lot of things that make it legal. A Supreme Court case was decided, and I think under Obama's term, I think it was like 2010. It's called Citizens United, and that basically said that free speech is money, and you can't limit free speech, so you can't leave money, and that's why you can have billions of dollars being thrown into these different campaigns, right? And who's going to be president? And like we have these really big oil companies that own Fox News that obviously are going to give billions of dollars to the Republican Party, and that's only two. They're called the Koch brothers, Koch, not like that, Mario. I know what you're thinking, but the Koch brothers, these guys actually, made a lot of money, and they basically bought Fox News and turned Fox News into basically the Republican news party. And they have definitely influenced a lot of our elections by ensuring that Republicans continue to win, who will make sure that oil is taken care of, that we don't start addressing, things like climate change, and that they reduce taxes, all those things that Republicans largely stand for, which is lower taxes, pro-business, pro-war, kind of confused about the environment, rather would have more jobs than limit the environment, than try to stop things from the environment that may cause jobs to be lost, right? So, and then, all of that frustration. Now, remember that, Jeb, I'm going to say this, and, Mario and I were kind of talking about this earlier, but the populists are really a farmer focus, right? It's really the progressives that take this and say, it's not only a farmer issue, it's also women. It's also people working in the cities who are not getting fair wages. So, I would say, populist, which leads to progressives. And remember, Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive, although he was considered, I think, a Democrat. I believe he was. Woodrow Wilson, for sure, a Democrat, was considered a progressive at that time. I would say that the next step after your little theory is the populist. So I'd add a little bit more to your little comment that you made there. Really the corruption in business is allowed underneath the watch of Abraham Lincoln, and really his focus on winning the Civil War. And the little thing that I would add at the end was not only rise populists, but the populists would morph into the progressives. And basically the Republicans and the Democrats, the reason why you don't hear like a progressive president without the word Republican or Democrat, they look at this and go, oh my God, we better start doing what they say, or else we're going to not get the votes and get elected. So they begin. So some Republicans go, well, I think about this about populists. And then some Democrats go, well, what about this for populists and progressives? And they start adopting those traits, if that makes sense. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to win the election, right? Right now you have a bunch of socialists that are kind of crazy on the Democratic side, the Bernie Sanders groups, right? And they're trying to figure out right now, all the Democrats, we got to think about 14 Democrats trying to figure out which one is going to represent the Democratic Party. Well, they're all fighting for votes, and some of them are going extreme. Some are, we have Elizabeth Warren saying, let's impeach the president. And then we have the other 11 go, well, hold on, let's get the facts first before we just start impeach the president. And there's another reason why. But my point being is that the progressives and the populists show up as a third party, and we know third parties don't win. However, there's such a strong force that the Democrats and Republicans say, some of the things that the progressives and populists believe, we better start acting on, be sure we get their vote, or else somebody may just vote for that party. And there is a progressive president that comes in as a third party. I want to say President McKinley at one time was considered a progressive, just a pure progressive. So with the populists, there were just people who want to change the current government and business, right? And I assume the change. Yeah, again, when you come to the populist, Jeb, if we can go back to that page, I don't know if anybody has that. It was really, I'm actually on the wrong page number here. Jeb, it was really about farmers. It's really about cheap land. It's really about frustration that, and also it's also about the railroads, right? The railroads at this time are screwing over the farmers and making sure that they don't get a lot of money. So, go ahead and Jeb, if you want to take a look at 352. 352, you have 1, 2, and 3, right? The direct election of U.S. senators. Instead of these corrupt state legislators doing it, we're going to direct elections. We're going to have lower tax rates. We're going to have a graduated income rate where the people are rich, and the banking system, right? And also during this time, we also have this silver movement that the populists like, right? What are they trying to do? Trying to not only put gold, but silver in there. What are they trying to do? Increase the money supply. You increase the money supply, you decrease the interest rate, right? So it's really about farmer. It's really, if you think about it, it's really a farmer focused thing. It's about getting cheap credit to buy land easier. And then, look at the last paragraph on 352. In addition, the Alliance platform demanded treasury notes and silver to be used to increase the amount of money circulation, which farmers, again, populace, I really think of white farmers, and then when I think of progressives, it's not only white farmers, it's white women, and it's also white wage earners that are found in the Northeast and the North and where these cities have popped up. Yeah, of all the strikes, Pullman is probably was one of the most important on page 331. That's the one that you hear a lot on. You also hear a lot about the Chicago Haymarket building bombing. So yeah, the Pullman strike. There's a court case, Debs or whatever. But anyways, they basically used law to break up the Pullman strike, to break up the unions. Remember, it says strike breaking up there. There's a paragraph on what they could do to stop them. Yeah, here we go. If you go to page 329, Jed. So these are some of the things that the businesses would do. There's 5 bullets, right? They would lock them out. They say, fine, you guys can go strike. We won't even open, and congratulations. Now you guys aren't getting any money, and I know you guys live paycheck to paycheck, so good luck trying to find some food, and good luck trying to live in a home. All right, another thing they would do is blacklist. Hey, guess what? If you're pro-union, we're going to send this all across the United States. You're not going to be able to get a job. So don't ever join a union. Yellow dog contracts. They basically say, hey, if you're going to join and be in there, you can't ever join a union. Private guards and state militia to use violence and shoot people against strikes, and then getting court injunctions, right? Which is that Debs, right? Saying that you can't do that. So. Yeah. Under industrial were those 5 strikes. Let's go to the Pullman strike. We can go and look at these homestead strike, right? What happened is they used weapons, they used lockout, they used private guards, and after 5 months they got defeated. So that strike was not successful. The next one that they did was the Pullman strike. Cleveland basically Grover Cleveland uses the army to keep the mail going at this time. Debs and unioners are arrested in jail just for asking that, which effectively ended the strike, it says. Then the Supreme Court said that you could use court injunctions against strikes. So you basically sue the union and say you're not allowed to do that, which now could break up unions even quicker. And then Debs goes, fine, I tried to work with you. I'm going to get even crazy. I'm going to turn to socialist, maybe even anarchist. I'm going to start blowing things up, right? Because they're so frustrated about what's happening. So, you can see whether it be the home strike or the Pullman strike, those things were used, right? Court injunctions were used. State militia was used. Violence was used. Jailing the union, right? Nami Matsu goes running around saying, let's go fight for a better wage. You put his butt in jail and see what the kids do next. So that's the story of that. A lot of the strikes were broken up, with the support of the government at certain levels. The government allowed the state militia. The government created laws to make this illegal. The government and the Supreme Court ruled on certain things to allow the employers, that means the bosses, have even more tools to break up unions, right? Court injunctions. You could use the court at any time to break up a union, right? Because you're allowed to in this Supreme Court case. Women are at this time are frustrated that they don't have their rights. Hindreen, whenever you talk about women, go to, I know that Maria knows about this, go to my website. And we go to my website underneath the review page that we're all on right now, period 9 in review. At the very, very bottom, you will see women in history. And I like doing not the video, obviously, for me when I'm talking, because I can't show you guys a video and you guys can't look at the video at the same time. But I like looking at, I don't know why it's not popping up. It's still loading for me. But I like looking at that last document, right? So we can go through that real quickly and see how women are treated during this time. For whatever reason, mine isn't loading, so I'm going to try one more time. Maybe everybody's on it because we're all studying so hard. All 7 of us. So going down here, Gilded Age and Progressive Era, there it is. And there I say the Wilson and suffrage rights movement at that time. They look at, looking at right above women's suffrage right movement. It talks about Ida Tarbell and the history of Standard Oil Company. It's a muckraker article, so they're writing things. Middle class women push reforms through the social gospel. We already talked about settlement houses and Jane Addams and the Whole House. So I'm not going to go any further, Hendrine, unless you have a very specific question, because I'm not just going to lecture for 20 minutes on just this page. But if you go to page 3, it says Gilded Age and Progressive Era from 1860s to 1920, and it gets you all the way to World War I, and tells you exactly in order what the heck is happening to women at this time. Okay, so look at 20% of adult women by 1900. Most were young single women, right? We talked about yesterday the Lowell system, which is basically a place where you can not only get a job, but also you could get an apartment. So there you go on that. That's all you need to know about women. Regarding sectionalism, the North was still seen as a place of energy, whereas the South and the West were developing. Yeah, I mean, Manifest Destiny hasn't completed. Remember that San Diego State's created in 1898. Los Angeles was actually created as a city well before, during the time of Spain, when Spain ruled it and started bringing out those California missions. But largely, yeah, and this is also, Jeb, another thing, we also have the Great Migration at this time, right? Where the South, a lot of Southerners, especially Black Southerners, they move up to Chicago. And why are they moving up to Chicago? And if you think of Chicago, it's a very high African-American city. And why are they going to Chicago? Because there's factories up there and they're free and they want to get as far away probably from the KKK as possible and from this Southern issue. So we have the Great Migration, which is free African-Americans after the Civil War moving north, probably get away again from prejudice and some of the Southern laws that were being created. In addition to that, to find opportunities for work. So yeah, you can see the North. Again, when I say the North, I like to call it the Northeast. And also, I want to say it's the Upper Midwest, not just the Midwest. Again, we're looking at the cities like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're looking at the cities like Cleveland, Ohio. We're looking at the cities like Detroit, Michigan. We're looking at Chicago, Illinois. So again, in that Ohio River Valley, up there, you could definitely consider the North, but I call it the Upper Midwest, right underneath the Great Lakes. So there's a lot of factories that are being built there. And again, why is that happening over there? Access to waterways, right? A lot of trades happening. If you kind of look at the map, you're going to see a bunch of cities from the Midwest all the way to the east. And then when you guys get in the middle, called the Colorado Rockies, well, because the Colorado Rockies is a bunch of mountains, it's really hard to grow things. It's really hard to transport things. So you don't have as many large cities, right? And then if you think of the West, really a large cities on the West Coast: San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, San Diego. From San Diego to Los Angeles is basically what we call megalopolis. It's one massive city on top of a city. So we have Orange County, we have Santa Barbara County. These have high populations. Why? Because it's a little bit easier to move things on the ocean, right? In the Midwest, especially the Rocky Mountains and the Mountain West, what we'd say, basically from Nevada all the way to Colorado to Idaho, Wyoming, all the way down to, and also down in Arizona and New Mexico, you got a massive desert, right? There's no such thing as air conditioning at this time, right? So people aren't going over there. So people, I would say, are going to the Upper Midwest. Okay. All right, guys, I know that that's only 47 minutes, but honestly, I'm about to black out because I have not eaten any food and I really need to eat some food. So hopefully you guys are okay with 47 minutes. Really apologize for that, but I had to do some ASB stuff right after school, and that caused me to not be able to eat, and it's 8:47, and I have a condition where if I don't eat, bad things start happening. So it's called Gilbert syndrome. So I actually can lose consciousness if I don't eat regularly and drink regularly. So with that being said, I don't want to lose consciousness. So thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Sorry about the shorter version, but like I said, I'm about to lose it. So thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. No worries. Got to do emails now. So you think you guys are working? I'm working just like you guys. So I'm right with you guys. May 10th is coming up. Keep going strong. Keep rocking it. No hindering. I'm not doing it. I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. I'm going to go eat some food. All right, guys. Great questions per usual. Sorry for the short one. Sorry for being about 10, 12 minutes earlier, but got to do it. So good questions. Hopefully that kind of gives you an overview of what's going on. And let me know tomorrow if you guys have any more specific questions about period 6, and we'll keep running. No problem, Nora. Hope you guys kill it, man. And we'll take Friday off. We'll take Saturday and Sunday off. We'll try to rock hard next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I'm actually trying to see, like I said, I don't know if you guys saw it earlier, but tomorrow in class, at the very beginning of class, I'll kind of announce if anybody wants to stay after school Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for a couple hours, and then really kind of work this thing out, make sure we're good to go. So, cool. All right, guys, I'm going to roll. You guys have a good one. We will see you guys tomorrow. Once again, apologize for it, but I really got to get to this whole eating thing and drinking water thing, or else my body may have some problems and you may not see me tomorrow. All right, guys. Later. Have a good one.